Have you done any interviews before?
Not like this, no. My name is Patrick Waldo. I am the Director of Product Management and Planning at Decernis, a food chain ID company. Decernis is the leader in providing regulatory information to the largest consumer product companies in the world and food companies to help them comply with international rules and regulations. So in the summer of 2013, we were looking for help with Plone, which was a content management system that we were using very heavily at the time. And STX was one of the people who responded to our ad in the various forums and postings that we had made. And I was very quickly impressed by the quality and the scope that STX offered, particularly at that time the work they were doing in the banking sector, which from a confidential and privacy and security perspective is very close to our world. We started with one developer at the time, and within 6 months we had spun up a full Scrum team with 3 developers and a tester. Absolutely. At the time I was the lead developer for, I guess, 2 of our products. And we were looking to expand the team because I couldn't do all of the work alone. And I was actually a self-taught programmer, so learning about scaling an application and all the engineering side of software development was really out of my scope. I could prototype very well, solve client problems, do the solutions architect kind of work. But we really needed properly trained developers to do the software development. And that's why we sought out the different contractors and different folks that we evaluated for the role and then picked STX. At the time, we were looking for a full-time employee, but the people who responded to the ad were actually all contractors because it was very hard to find talent using that framework at that time. So we sort of fell into outsourcing without particularly looking for it. The number one reason why I picked STX was their background in the banking sector. They understood the needs of security, confidential information, private information, or other sensitive information. We work with the largest consumer good manufacturers in the world, food companies. So they treat their formulas, their recipes, the materials that they use as trade secrets or highly confidential and it's a big issue for them. And so we need to be highly concerned with that data and those issues. And so partnering with someone who already had that in their back pocket made me feel far more comfortable than finding someone who maybe was a good developer or knew the framework very well or had some experience with corporate SaaS, but perhaps didn't have the kind of background with sensitive information or security to that level. Perhaps the story that stands out to me the most is when I came on a planning trip in the winter a number of years ago, and we were finishing out a client project, so there were a lot of deliverables. And instead of doing the typical planning session, we turned it into a hackathon because the whole team basically rallied together to finalize this project and solve all of the customer's problems. At that time, I was still developing, so I saddled up with them and we basically spent the next 48 hours fielding emails and feedback that we were getting live from the client, and one by one knocking out all of the bugs or improvements or feature requests that at the very last minute they were making. And then we signed off on the project and everything went well. So I knew that I could be in the trenches with that team. That's the level of trust that I have for them. And that was probably one of the very early experiences that I knew I could rely on STX. The tech stack has evolved quite a bit over the years. We started with a content management system called Clone, which is built on top of Zope. And over the last almost 7 years, we have transitioned to a Django API backend and an Angular front end. One thing that I've really appreciated about STX is that not only are they a strong Python shop, but they're also experts on Agile and particularly Scrum. So I began my own Agile journey at the same time that we picked up STX. And so I learned quite a bit about Agile, the Agile mindset, the principles. If I would have a problem at work, I could, or a particular stakeholder issue or a client issue that I wasn't quite sure how to resolve from a methodology perspective, I could usually lean on my account person or my Scrum Master for good ideas, whiteboarding or being an ear. And so I learned quite a bit just through monthly, 1-hour meetings where I kind of got a full education in Agile in general. And certainly I fulfilled that with my own continuing education, certification, and things like that. So learning from them, talking to the different Scrum Masters and folks who are trained in Agile in various ways has been a joy for me to learn and pick their brains from time to time and then apply it within the context that I work in. And that so far has been very successful and helped me develop in my career and my professional views on Agile in general. I ran cross country and track in college, and the words that are unsaid, running many miles on dirt roads is really how you create a team. So over the years, we've gone many miles together and just worked really hard. And that working together on the different problems has probably been the best way that I've learned about STX and how they work, and that I can rely on them, because when there's a problem, I know that they're there, and I know that they can solve their problem or solve my problem. I really don't have any doubts that if I need something from STX, that they're there to work with me. And that could be spinning up a team on short notice, that could be downsizing the team if the budget requires that, if that means bringing new expertise, if that means bringing on a contractor for 1 to 3 months, or if it's a day-to-day issue and there's a blocker or a bug, I know that I can call someone at STX and the issue will usually be resolved very, very quickly. Actually, just yesterday there was a major blocker that we had discovered, and the team resolved it in about 40 minutes. The patch was deployed to production. As a product manager, I work with the team every day, or almost every day. We have regular planning sessions. We call them grooming sessions or Q&A sessions. That's where we do quite a bit of the backlog grooming, review of the tickets and things like that. We of course do sprint planning together. We do retrospectives. So I have a formal meeting with the team to focus on the product management issues 2 or 3 times a week in the mornings in the US time. And then we have a weekly meeting with all of our IT staff that includes STX to deal with any production issues. So they work closely with our infrastructure teams as well as other IT teams so that we have a communication channel that we're all a part of. So we've brought them in, I think, quite a bit, rather than separating them out, saying this is the outsourced team, they get these bite-sized packages of work, we really treat the team more as a partner and more like an in-house development team. Decernis is based in the Washington, D.C. area, so that's Eastern time in the U.S. I'm personally based in Houston, Texas, so that's Central time. About half of our business is in Europe, and we have researchers located everywhere in the world. So managing time differences is what we do, and what we do quite well with our different teams. So we have a number of teams in Europe, we've got teams in parts of Asia, and other parts of the world as well. So working with STX is not a challenge for us. Typically my 8 a.m. to noon time slot is the busiest, of course, with my internal requests or client requests, as well as the STX meetings that I have. But almost every day at 8 a.m. I am talking to, or 8 a.m. Central Time, I'm talking to STX, I'm on Slack. Perhaps Slack is the best way to manage the time difference. And I've noticed that we've got a number of night owls on the team, so they can keep close to business hours when needed. Overall, there's always one person on the team who's available for most or all of the business hours that we have. The one thing that comes to mind when I think about my outsourcing experiences is that you tend to have two types of outsourcing companies. You get the type that's focused on the skills and they tell you that they can solve your problem. And then the other kind is the company that listens to you. What I found with STX over the years, and certainly at the beginning, is that they really listened to our problems and were able to sit with them and come up with some options or what they thought about it or from their own experience. So I think that was something that distinguishes STX from the other companies that I've either reached out to or evaluated over the years. For me, having a body in a seat for a developer is not a development team. Maybe someone can push out code or whatever, but I think you need someone who's able to think about the problem and think with you about the problem. And that's something that I think is unique to STX. In cases before, I would often have to create a detailed specification or a work order or detailed tickets where basically I would need to do most of the work without actually coding it. Whereas with STX, I can say, this is the mountain, how do we get up it? And the developers can take some time, they can think about it, we can do a research spike, I can collaborate with them, I can show them a mock-up, or they can provide some mock-ups. So it's very much a collaborative environment, which is very unique. One thing that is unique about the Decernis context is that we deal with a tremendous amount of complexity. We're dealing with laws that were barely written for people to understand, let alone machines. So how we turn unstructured data and fuzzy concepts and laws that are maybe not well written or not easy to understand is part of our day-to-day business. So we have a tremendous amount of intellectual talent within Decernis. We have subject matter experts, we have chemists, we've got lawyers, we've got PhDs of various kinds. So working with people who understand the tremendous amount of complexity and working with them to turn that into a simple product that the end user can consume is something that STX has helped us with.